Hey, thanks for joining us on another episode of Life, Love, and the Grind. Joining me today, Sean Allen from his remote location. And also, you've seen him on television if you watch Telemundo, Univision, just about countless other media networks. You've also seen our guest today, Jorge Mújica, who's going to be joining us about workers' rights, especially given this current situation we're in, which is just unprecedented, but workers are still out there. I mean, you fought very hard, Jorge, for paid sick leave. You fought for other issues which are vitally important now. And it sounds like you're still continuing the fight. Tell us what it's like in your industry, what it's like in your fight.
It is really awful. What we fought and won, the earned sick days, are only 5 days a year. So that's clearly insufficient for the current situation. So we are fighting to expand this to at least 2 paid weeks off because of the health emergency. And we are having hundreds of workers calling and saying that their industries are being considered essential and therefore they continue working, but they are working in the same situation, awful working conditions they have worked forever. So, elbow to elbow, no masks, no hand sanitizers, no nothing. And because the companies are considered to be essential, they just keep open and working. Hundreds of workers concentrated in small places.
I mean, I myself am an essential worker. Sean Allen has been deemed an essential worker, but a lot of our industries, it looks like a lot of our industries have at least taken the precautions of making sure people are safe, keeping them 6 feet apart. But some of these workers that you say you represent are not even getting those protections. What do you do? How do you help them in a situation like this?
Well, we are basically calling people to strike against coronavirus. Because if you simply don't go to work anymore, you may lose your job legally. So the remedy may be to strike. If you declare yourself on strike until working conditions improve, until companies follow to the letter the executive order of Governor Pritzker and all health recommendations by OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, then you can go out, go home, and the employer cannot fire you. That's the difference between going out on a strike and simply abandoning your job.
Yeah. Sean, yeah, I know a lot of your construction colleagues have been dealing with this, so you must have some questions as well.
Well, I mean, I think the biggest thing is just, like you say, on all these jobs that are deemed essential workers, how do you keep everyone 6 feet apart? In a lot of these, factory jobs and stuff, you're on top of each other. I mean, with us, we represent bricklayers, tile, marble, precast, tuck pointers. I mean, we're all deemed essential workers. We want our members to keep working, but I mean, what do you do when they want you to be 6 feet apart when you're on top of construction sites and all this? It's just, sometimes it's not possible, So, I mean, what we do is you can't tell our workers to go to work, right? I mean, if guys don't feel comfortable with working, then if you want to stay home, you have every right to do that. If you want to protect yourself, your family. But, also on the flip side, what do we do with all these workers that they can't survive without these paychecks? I mean, you're asking people to sit home for a month or maybe 2 months. I mean, what do we tell these workers to just, sit tight and, hang in there? Well, a lot of these people are living paycheck to paycheck.
That is correct. But the other option is to keep working and then contract the virus and take it home to your family. Mm-hmm. So really, the workers and particularly the kind of population we serve, which is a lot of undocumented workers, don't have the luxury to have health care, and of course they have to pay the rent, so they keep working. But this is going to mean in the long term that hundreds and probably thousands of workers are going to get sick because they keep working. So you have to put it in the balance. What do? Your meager minimum wage salary is not going to pay for your life. Our lives are more valuable than any company's profits.
Yeah. Just to kind of touch on what we have within the union. the union's taking really good measures and precautions on all these job sites. But on the flip side of that, these non-union construction sites have no precautions. They have no distancing. They have no hand sanitizer. I mean, how do we crack down on these non-union, my business, the construction sites and the non-union industries, I mean, when they could just get away with anything. And then on the union sites, we're taking all the necessary precautions to the best of our abilities on doing what's best for workers. I mean, how can we crack down on these non-union sites or these non-union companies in order to protect, their workers?
Well, basically, the response has been there forever. The right to organize doesn't depend on having a labor union. All workers have the right to organize. All workers can go out on strike. And OSHA regulations have been there forever. The employer is mandated to have a workplace free of recognized hazards. So it's just a matter of workers knowing their rights, organizing in the workplace with or without a union. But mostly, as you are putting forward, those workers without a union, they should know that the right to have a safe workplace still exists, even if they don't have a union. Problem is now,
how do you let them know?
Go out there and organize them? It's quite impossible for us to try, the classical way of creating an organizing committee and educating them. This is a very pressing situation. So workers have to take action right away. What we are doing is providing them with letters with the intention to strike, to sign and deliver to their employers, and then see what happens. Take it from there.
How do you communicate this with workers right now? Because obviously this is critically important. It's a matter of health right now. It could be a matter of life. So you need to get the message out to these workers that, hey, you have these protections. Make sure that the company is doing right by you. How do you make sure to get this message across to people?
Social media and mainstream media.
I lost my audio.
You were mentioning Univision before. Univision, incredibly enough, has been open for us to send a message, and they have put out our phone numbers so people can contact us. People can request letters that we can send to them via email or just via Facebook, Messenger, whatever, WhatsApp applications. So that's what we are doing. One thing, of course, is we are taking a lot of these workers' complaints to the Attorney General and to the Office of Labor Standards. But they have, of course, limited capacity. We cannot rely on government agencies to really go there and enforce, 200 or 300 or 400 in 400 workplaces, the regulations. So workers have to take action by themselves. There is no other solution here.
Well, I mean, some of these government agencies, can you bring that audio down, please, a little bit? Some of these government agencies themselves are kind of closed down right now throughout this virus. So they need to be protecting these workers, and they themselves are not in a position where they're fully staffed, which I bet becomes more of a paramount concern to you in terms of how do we get these concerns addressed? And how do you deal with that?
That is correct. A few days ago, Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot sent the police to the front, the front lake, the parks in front of the lake, because of the hundreds of people that were gathering there without respecting social distancing, et cetera, And our comment to that was, why not sending the police to all these companies who are still operating? They shouldn't be, many of them, because they are not essential. And in the ones that even are essential, why don't you send a police force to investigate, check out the situation, and then help the Office of Labor Standards of the City of Chicago and BACP, the Business Affairs and Consumer Protection Agency, and the Attorney General. There's where the police should be, not in the lakefront.
Well, I'll tell you this, and Sean will agree with me. I mean, communication just now is vitally important, but also quite a challenge. I mean, Sean traditionally sits right here next to me. We have another guest here. In order just to put on this show, we've had to take part in all these technological advances in order to get this message out. So, I mean, I can't even imagine in terms of mobilizing all these workers, Jorge, what you have to deal with in order to make sure that these messages get out there and people know that the protections that they have are still there. And even though the government might not be working, these courts might not be working at full capacity, that they're still out there to protect the working rights. What do you tell people? I see that you do Facebook Lives fairly often. I see you have a big following on Facebook Live. Have you noticed that this is a good mobilization tool? Hey, Sara.
Sean, there was a question for you.
You hear that? Did you hear that, Jorge?
Sara, did you kill my mic? Because I don't think they can hear me.
They can hear you. I think the question is for.
That was for, can you guys hear me
I'm
or no?
struggling hearing you.
Whatever you did, could you please undo that?
I didn't do anything. Can you guys hear us?
Can you hear us in the studio?
I can
us
hear
in the
you a little
studio?
bit. It's just kind of like real echo.
Jorge, can you hear me? Anyone hear me now? Live.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
online
clear.
television. Okay, this is good. You can hear me? Can you guys both hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
This is perfect because this illustrates my point. I could not have planned this any better. My question was the communication faces challenges too. I mean, Sean, you can hear me now? Can you
Yeah, I
guys
hear
hear?
you a little bit.
Sean used to sit right here, right next to me, and we used to be able to have a show. Now we've been able to have to capitalize on the technology to get the message out. And my question was, Jorge, I see that you do Facebook Lives fairly often. Has this become kind of a key in getting your message out to workers?
Can you hear him, Jorge?
You know,
It's
I think
getting caught. There's between an echo and only some words we can hear, where I can hear.
do me a favor, try to take a step back and see if we can find a better Wi-Fi signal in your place, because I often find that when it starts locking up, it's a Wi-Fi issue or an internet issue. But in the meantime,
Maybe.
we also have another guest.
And let me move
Any better?
around because I needed to charge my phone and I got away from my router. Maybe I can do better.
I hear you a little better on this end now. And guys, if you're just watching us, you're witnessing some of the technological challenges that we have to deal with putting on a show.
The new world we live in.
Exactly. Stop that. You're noticing the technological challenges that we have to deal with in putting the show on the air with 3 people in 3 remote locations. But it's part of the challenge. I mean, this is the new way of life where we have to kind of get a message out there with unideal circumstances. But the message is not only as important, but critically and vitally more important and life-saving. So for that reason, we have Jorge Mújica, which hopefully you can hear me now. Hopefully you can hear me a little better. Can you? Thumbs up.
I think so.
Perfect, because actually what I was saying that our studio audience was listening to was there's a technological challenge going forward with this in terms of communication, just in terms of our show. And I'm sure you've had communication issues dealing with mobilization, but I've noticed you've done a lot of Facebook Lives. Tell me, has that been an effective mobilization tool for you?
Well, so far we've been able to mobilize groups of workers. The situation is so awful that they are prompted to take action. So, letters of support, a couple phone calls, and what we do is get workers themselves to mobilize their co-workers. We give them the basics, the 101, very fast, incredibly organizing 101. Talk to your workers, talk to them over the phone or something, whatever, and circulate a petition, and then you're on. You're in business. You're organizing. It's not the tradition. We would do this, taking our time, creating organizing committees, giving them workshops on labor rights. We can do that now. But never at a factory just a few days at 6. With the social distancing and the physical distancing, of course, being observed. But we were talking to workers with Cristobal Sandoval precisely because they were facing an incredibly awful situation where a couple co-workers had already been diagnosed with COVID-19. So
He's actually on the line with us
life
right
where
now.
you have to go there and do it personally.
Cristobal, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. How are you, my dear brothers?
Doing well. Thank you
Hello,
so
Jorge.
much for joining us.
It's a
And
pleasure
actually,
I can't hear him.
we were actually just talking about the work you've done. So first of all, tell us the organization you're with and the struggle you had to deal with recently with some of the employees at one of the companies having to deal with COVID-19 and what you've done.
We are Immigrant Solidarity Page, and our mission is to educate, organize, and
His
mobilize
audio's not
DuPage
on.
County. Escucha? We are Immigrant Solidarity Page. Our mission is to educate, organize, and mobilize DuPage County around the
Can
rights.
you hear him, Raza?
Yeah, I can hear him
guys
just
hear?
fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you hear?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I
Okay,
can't
we're
hear
from-
him.
Okay, Sean, we'll fill you in just 1 second here. But Cristobal, if you could just talk about a little about the work you've done.
Yes, we're inspired by Jorge, really, and a lot of the work that he's done. We started a worker center. I think we're about 3 years old. The Casa DuPage Worker Center here in Wheaton. We are an immigrant rights organization. We started after the mega marches in 2007. But the past 5-6 years, the majority of the calls have been calls on workers' rights and calls on wage theft and people that want to unionize. So we had to go and learn how to labor organize. So we've been doing that for the past 5 years. And the West Chicago has been particularly a hotbed of activity because it being the only majority Latino town in DuPage. And so this happened last week, and the phones were ringing off the hook about what had happened. The workers outraged about the coronavirus and having to show up and work.
So I bet you've had to learn quite a bit throughout this experience on how to get the work, because again, we were talking about how this is literally a life and death issue right now for people and what you've had to do. So the company, they shut down for a few days, right? They did some cleaning. They did all that work. What happened then? I understand that Casa DuPage also approached them that there's certain conditions that they want them to meet. Is that correct?
Yeah, they agreed to shut down for 4 days, shutting down on Thursday, shutting down on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, and they just opened on Tuesday. We are calling, and we continue to call for 2 weeks paid leave for the workers, and that's to clean the company up. But I think the biggest concern that we have is that a lot of the workers, and we just saw a third case happen on Sunday, a lot of the workers assume that they're sick. And the policy at the company right now is to, they have a nurse there and they're checking people's temperature, and they gave people a pretty form to self-identify, have you been around anyone with coronavirus? Do you suspect you're infected? Have you been anywhere? And the big irony is the only place that they've been around where people are infected is at their company. So we've been trying to highlight this in the press and with the workers. And so those are our calls. We're trying to get 2 weeks of paid time for the worker. And we want every single worker checked. And this is what the workers want themselves, to know that they're going back not sick, but they're going back healthy. And of course, they're making food for the community, and they're making electrolyte drinks. And we want to make sure the consumer safety component here, that we don't have infected workers making inadvertently food. And the workers have this under conscience. They've told our worker center, we don't want to be part of some kind of social sin here, being obliged to do something we won't want to do and potentially affecting people's food.
I mean, it's just the safety of the workers. But on top of that, I didn't even think about that. I mean, this is consuming products people consume. So you got to make sure that safety is throughout the whole process, that nothing's being contaminated. Let me ask you this. How closely do both of your organizations work together, and how closely do you work, especially in light of a crisis like this, which is affecting a broader community? Let's start with you, Jorge.
Well, there's a handful of worker centers. Originally, Cristobal Cavazos started with an immigrant organization. And then, of course, they became involved in labor rights work because most immigrants work and most immigrants were reporting bad working conditions. So that's a focus, that's a concentration. But of course, this is endless. I mean, it goes from side to side. If you're an immigrant, if you don't speak English, if you're a factory worker, if you're a minimum wage worker, then your working, living, health conditions are going to be awful all across the board. And then it transcends even that. If you work at a McDonald's, it doesn't matter if you are an undocumented worker or you are a U.S. citizen, you earn minimum wage, your working conditions are going to have benefits, and so on and on. So there's an identifier among all working class, definitely. What we do, we try coordinating efforts. Sometimes it's not possible because of distances, but we combine and share resources. So Cristobal and myself have been involved in several struggles out there in DuPage County. Because if you have some kind of expertise, you have to share it. Knowledge is not to make money, knowledge is to be shared, and resources are to be shared, definitely. And the target is to share it with workers in the end so they can take action.
Well, I can't agree with you more. Sean's back with us. Sean, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, and I cannot agree with you more, Jorge, when you talk about it's how important it is to share resources. As a matter of fact, the way I found Cristobal is somebody mentioned to me, someone else in the press, that's like, this is a great story, this is a great resource, you need to contact him, you need to see if he can shed some light on what's going on in the fight for workers' rights and worker safety and the safety of all the consumers who consume the products that are being produced in a situation like this. So if you're just joining us, which it looks like there's quite a few people who are now, we are talking with Jorge Mújica and Cristobal, and I'm going to say this wrong, so make sure to correct me. Cavazos, correct? Or
Cavazos.
Cavazos.
Cavazos. Cavazos. We have a little dip in the middle there. Yeah.
the tilde. But
yeah, no tilde, but you're almost Cavazos.
but both of you are sharing with us some of the resources and some of the challenges that workers, especially the Hispanic workers, the Latino workers, are having to face in a situation like this, in terms of getting the communication out there for their own safety. Let's talk a little about that. Tell me some of the more important lessons that you are learning as this process goes on.
Well, what I would say right now is I think Jorge has been a really good example to us, the younger organizers, that I think when there's moments of crisis here, the workers want to see boldness, they want to see people out there. And if we're attempting to be any kind of a vanguard organization and helping the workers here, we really have to be the most active, the most vocal here. And the most, I think that the particularly the Mexican workers, they like to see, there's an old saying that boldness breeds beauty, magic, and power. And, I think that more and more the Latino workers, I want to see a bold leadership. They want to see Jorge Mújica on Facebook on Sunday night, letting them know what's happening in the world, making sense of things. They want to see us answering calls. We start to get calls at 6 a.m, and they want to see us there. And particularly, they want to see the action. So I think, with the state of the labor movement, that has been, as you guys know, there's been some major declines in the labor movement. I think that's coincided with some major advances in the worker centers. And like I say, particularly here in Chicago, I think that that since the 2006 mega marches and Jorge in the March 16th coalition, right? March, what's the March? I forget the date.
Sean?
12?
Yeah, maybe 12.
The original coalition of immigrants in Chicago, the coalition there's always been a focus on labor here in Chicago, and I think that's continued on, particularly with our group, Immigrant Solidarity Page, that we've seen at the core of the immigrant struggle, a labor struggle, and really in the end, an international struggle for workers' rights.
Well, labor has never faced, just like all of us have never faced a crisis like this. And like you said, when a crisis happens, that's when this boldness is needed. That's when people need to step up and really take the bull by the horns and make sure that the workers are safe and that there's some lead out there. Jorge, tell us, I mean, how has it been for you? I see you're out there on Facebook, mobilizing, talking to your constituents, keeping them communicated with. How important do you find that communication to be with your members? And if Jorge can't hear me, then the same question goes to you, Cristobal.
Can you say that one more time?
Oh, can you hear me?
I think you.
Hopefully you guys can hear me. And again, if you're watching this and if you guys can hear me, this is again the communication technical difficulties that we face in getting a message across to you, but it's still fundamentally important that we come to you and bring you these messages about how workers are dealing with these issues. So I was just asking both of you, by a show of thumbs up, who can hear me right now? Hey, 2 out of 3. I love it. The odds.
2 out of 3 is not bad. We'll take it.
Oh, hey, look. I don't know if you gave me a thumb. You gave me some
Go
finger.
ahead without me. Go ahead without me.
You gave me some finger. That wasn't the thumb. But yeah, so tell us about the challenges that the labor movement faces right now in getting that message across.
Well, I think, my dear brothers, we're seeing corporate power, the oligarchy, the plutocracy. It's never been more entrenched. I think the conditions for the immigrant workers in our community have never been tighter. I hear the work days that people are putting in. They're working what would have been 3 or 4 jobs, even like 20 years ago with the technology they're using. The capitalism has gotten extremely acute right now at this level that we're in right now. And it's really the working class that's taking it the hardest. And particularly if you're undocumented and you're working in the service sector, in the warehouse sector, in the factory sector, you are being particularly hit hard by just this insane drive for profit before the people. And that's really what we're trying to get out there. That's what the worker centers are are always bringing that true, that it's the people are going to be coming before the profit. And that's what we're getting the organized, because here in DuPage, where I'm at, I'm in Wheaton right now. There's factories all over the area with workers. We have 2 big issues here in the Mexican community in DuPage. Half of the workers are being forced to work, risking their health, and their safety. They're being called in factories in West Chicago, in Elk Grove Village. You're seeing about half of the workers forced to work with no protections for their lives. And I really think the bosses could care less, if they have coronavirus or not. They're probably just going to get fired if they do. And then the other half are completely unemployed because they've been laid off. They've just been told, we'll call you whenever there's work again. So you really see right now in this acute time and crisis where you have a ruling class that's given $2.2 trillion to the stock market and to the bonds, but they're really taking the workers that are out there on the streets, in the warehouse, in the factories, in the restaurant, and they're just letting them twist in the wind. So this really highlights one of the contradictions of capitalism at this moment right now. And in that contradiction, the capitalism that we could see quite clearly here, that this is not an economic system that's sustainable, that's healthy, or that has any kind of humanism in it. And that's where the work of organizing comes in.
Sean, would you like to weigh in on this?
Where do we go forward on this? I'd like to know. So, being in the construction sector of, unions, where are we going? I mean, do you see a strong surge of Latino workers joining the unions after we get out of this pandemic? Because, in our field, it's about 80% of the non-union workforce is Latino. Do you think that they're going to try to come in, or where do you see it going after this pandemic? Can you hear me?
I heard you.
It's better now.
Oh, okay. Sean, repeat the question.
No, so I'm saying, so after all this pandemic's over, obviously I'm with the construction side. 80% of our non-union workforce is Latinos. Do you see them joining unions after this pandemic? Do you see kind of a spark or a revolution of them kind of coming forward and wanting a better life? Or where do you see the labor movement kind of after this pandemic?
If I may respond, that's a complicated question, and it deserves a complicated answer. Labor unions are now facing a very big problem, is the limit of their collective bargaining agreements. Labor unions, I think, have to learn in this pandemic to be incredibly more bold and write a whole lot better collective bargaining agreements. When I say workers can strike because of their health and safety conditions, if they are not union, that doesn't apply to union members because of the famous non-strike clauses in the collective bargaining agreements. So labor unions have to change. Labor unions have to change also in order to try to attract these Latino workers. Latino workers are willing to join unions, but structurally speaking, labor unions have a lot of complications when they want to work with Latino workers because they don't have bilingual organizers, they don't have bilingual business agents, they don't translate the collective bargaining agreements, so they cannot serve the Latino workers, Latino immigrant workers very well. And that's a big obstacle. So, yes, the population would be willing to join, I think. That's what I get from workers. They are willing to, but labor unions have a lot of structural impediments to really serve efficiently this population.
Well, it seems to me very clear that in order to represent the needs of a population of people, you have to be able to reach out to them. You have to be able to communicate with them and make sure that you know their needs. I know, for instance, Sean Allen, being an organizer, took the initiative to take Spanish classes. And I also followed suit and was a very poor Spanish student and had to drop out of his classes. I'll bring him back.
But buenos dias.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have to evolve with the times. Obviously we know the new workforce is coming in. It's majority Latinos, but we have to find a way for these Latinos to want to come and join unions. My family come from Ireland many generations ago. So the Irish, the Italian workers, the Polish workers, they all came and they joined right to the labor movement. They ran right to the union halls. Where now it's like we have all the workforce there, we have all these workers, but they're not wanting to join the unions. And in my non-union workforce, it's 6 to 7 days a week, 10 to 12 hours a day, no health insurance, no benefits, but they don't pay taxes. So they're scared to join the union because they're like, well, I don't want to pay taxes. I don't want the taxes taken out. So, I mean, this is a huge fight that we're always fighting with them as well, because they like that. They like working for cash and all that. And that's actually a huge issue that we're dealing with the state, So there's so many obstacles on how we have to try to intrigue everyone to join the labor movement for the greater good of all workers.
I can't hear Sean at all.
I'm sorry. What was that?
I can't hear Sean at all.
Oh, you can hear Sean? Sean, to recap what he was saying, was talking about some of the struggles in bringing certain segments of the population into the labor movement. But in responding, I believe, to what Jorge, and tell me if I'm mixing up what anyone was saying, about how the labor movement and unions in particular need to become more inclusive and have policies that bring in certain segments of the population. I think what's also, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
What I believe.
Yeah, and
go ahead. I'm sorry.
If I may again, that's another lesson for both workers and labor unions. Is these new organizations like Cristobal's and myself, the worker centers, we have access to these populations. We can convey the message of labor unions to these populations. We can bring these workers into labor unions. We are not labor unions, but we can very well be the middleman, the step in between. So labor unions, little by little, are learning to work with worker centers. We have respect unions the way they are. But they have to learn that we can deliver. Last year, we organized 5 groups of workers into labor unions. From teachers to welders and whatnot. So we can do it. We can deliver. But labor unions have to really learn to work with us too, the same way we are learning to work with labor unions.
Well, I think
Jorge,
that
do you see a good partnership between the labor unions and what you guys have going on? Can you hear me?
Sean was asking if you see a good partnership between labor unions and the community groups that you do. Can you hear me?
I could hear you perfectly.
Perfect. So it's a mishmash of who can hear what. So it's like a puzzle that's developing as we go, just like what's going on out there. We're going to learn as we go. But one of the things that I will ask for whoever can hear me and anyone who can hear me, please hit thumbs up. And hopefully you all can hear me out there because I know a couple people can't even hear. And again, this is the technology. We're competing with every other broadband provider who's streaming their dancing and their dogs. So we're trying to get an important message out there, but those messages are important in their own way. One of the things that I will ask, Jorge, can you hear me now? No, I guess.
1 out of every 3 words.
So I got to make 1 out of every 3 words important. He didn't get that joke.
Yeah, very poorly.
I would be remiss if I didn't say which organization you're with. You're with Arise Chicago, which is a labor faith organization. Tell us about that and tell us about the work you do.
Arise Chicago was originally created as a religious and faith leaders solidarity network with labor unions. But down the line, workers started going to Arise Chicago and saying, I am not union. I'm not a union member. How can you help me? So Arise created a worker center, and that's the side where I work. And we have been developing ever since for the last 18 years. What we do is, teaching workers, educating workers, organizing workers. So if you don't have the right information, you cannot enforce and exercise your rights. So we do a lot in this area, educating workers, making them aware of their rights, teaching them the basics, want to organize a group of workers in the workplace, and then getting them ready to take action. If possible at all, and that's always our objective, if possible at all, we try to unionize this group. Not time is possible. Sometimes you deal with a small factory with 30, 40, 50, 60 workers. That's an easy one. Sometimes you deal with incredibly big operations with 3,000 workers, and that's almost an impossible task. Not even labor unions go after corporations with 3,000 workers and 47 locations. It's incredibly difficult. But we do whatever we can, starting with education again, and then creating, organizing committees, training the workers, and helping them and supporting them to take action. That's what we do.
You've recovered a lot of stolen wages. Tell us about that. Stolen wages.
We helped NABET, for instance, your own union,
my union,
unionizing Channel 11 and the public channels in Chicago.
It's funny. I was just
so we lend support and solidarity.
And I'll say this: the work you did for us, we brought you into our negotiation with another television station because of the work you've done and because of what we've seen you do. But what I think is vitally important now is how you're continuing that work to ensure the safety of union, non-union, just the people out there, just people who are out there trying to make a living, feed their family, and how you're getting this message across that while COVID-19 is threatening our community, there are groups of people here to help you. I'd like both of you to respond to that, or whoever heard it.
No, I heard it. I think in a lot of ways, one of the beautiful openings for a worker center is we're kind of going back to the soul. At least, we're trying to, almost like the syndicalist soul of unionizing. I was born in 1979. I've witnessed the completely reform-oriented unionism My dad was a Teamster Local 705, and I respect the members of the union. But we've seen a lot of in that time, a lot of delays, a lot of losses of overtime. And I really think it's been the style that we've seen in the United States of a Samuel Gompers type reformist unionism. We take whatever we can get. We're cautious. We're tied to the Democratic Party. We just wanted to just the status quo a little bit to the left. But I think like our organization, we've gone back and we've read Enrique Flores Magón, the famous Mexican anarchist. We've gone back to read Emiliano Zapata, that at the core of wealth is the labor theory of value. The land belongs to the people that work it. We've gone back and read some of these syndicalists, the Peter Kropotkin and the Mutual Aid. So what we see here is that where in the past in our organization, we would just send people to talk to the unions and, that we would just hire some paid organizer. But inspired by the soul of unionization, the syndicalist soul, we might say the radical solidarity, the workers' control of production. Who talks about that anymore? But I think these are some of the ideas that we're talking about in Immigrant Society Page and the Casa de Page Worker Center. We're part of the Interfaith Workers Justice Network, and we had a conference a few months ago, and we're seeing some really beautiful organizing in apple orchards and in North Carolina, in the pig plants, in the Purdue chicken in Texas, and you're seeing a lot of creative people in the Latino community here that are really bringing back unionization to its radical core. And I think what's that radical core? We're not unionizing just because we want to reform or we just want a little bit more money or we just want a better treatment on the job. All of that is important, but I think workers, in particular the Latino community, are more and more realizing that we are creating the wealth here. And in a factory, we see some of these factories where the hateful boss drives in a Mercedes or a BMW and just looks at the workers with scorn. And as the French like to say, behind every big fortune is a big theft. And I think in our community, we're trying to take that to heart more and more. And we're bringing back that core, that unionization is not just reform. It's not just a capitalism light. It's really asking for more. It's really understanding that we're creating the value here, and we deserve more, if not all of it.
Well, I think you can see that better now than ever, that workers have all the power because the world shut down. Raza, he can't hear me. Maybe relay this.
I hear you.
Maybe relay it to Cristobal. Because what I'm saying is that, everyone's seeing now more than ever that we have all the
If
power.
you could relay what Sean is saying, because
Yeah.
I can't hear him.
Oh, yeah. Sean was saying more than ever now, he sees that workers have more control because of what's going on.
We have all the power. And I think even the capitalists and the corporate, bosses realize that, without us on the front lines doing all the work, they're not surviving either. So better now more than ever. The workers and union members in particular are the future and are the dominant force in the entire country.
Did you guys hear that?
He can't hear it.
Jorge, can you hear any of this? Can you hear the stuff I'm saying? And
I could hear you. I could hear you perfectly.
Okay.
I could hear you too, Raza.
Great.
I can't hear Sean. I just can't hear Sean.
And that's what keeps this exciting and interesting.
It's so exciting, dude. It's a blast.
It's like an orchestra of who can hear.
Yeah, what a fun
But you
time.
know what? It really is like a puzzle. And just like everything going on out there, this is what we're going to do. We're going to figure it out as we go along. Part of the reason we did this show today was to promote that these two excellent guests will be joining us again Sunday on WCPT, where we will have the airwaves behind us and be able to get the message out to a broader audience where hopefully everyone can hear what's going on. But I consider this a promotion that needs to be done to let people know what exactly is going to be the next show, because this is something we need to know, what's happening with workers on the front lines who need a voice out there.
This is all that matters. Us workers on the front lines.
Absolutely, always and forever. And I'm actually reading some comments that are coming in, and I'm seeing that Rich Lewandowski is saying hello. And Rich Lewandowski, for anyone who doesn't know, is one of our best friends and one of our premier printers who we've used quite a bit. Sean's used him. I've used him in my union runs and campaign runs. Sean, tell us a little about him. I know he's 4 generations deep in the printing business and has always provided good products.
Yeah, well, I mean, he helped me win my election, my race. We did mailers that were, a great price and always on time. And he also used Sara Sadat, our great, third wheel to our show, helped her win her race and so many others. It's important to not only promote the good union workers, but also the good union printers and just good union everything. American made, union made. 100%.
A family that's been doing it for 4 generations has perfected their art, has always provided quality printing services. And I can't say one thing. We've used him numerous times. And as a matter of fact, we had a guest on here when we did our sponsorship who was like, oh, yeah, I use him. He's great. And it's just in this community we're working, we need to know the people who do good work, who provide good products out there, and no better than Breaker Press and Rich Lewandowski.
Yeah, we appreciate his support always, and always use union.
Always use union. Guys, any other messages you want to get across?
Jorge Thirsty.
Jorge, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Jorge, I don't know if you can hear it, Raza.
All right.
Not at all.
We can hear you.
Message to what?
You gotta love this, this great technology.
And that's for you, Jorge. What's your message?
It up again. What it says? Message.
Hold it up again, Raza. Raza, can you hold it up?
I don't have the best penmanship, so let me bear with me for a second.
Well, the basic message for our basic message worker is look for information, become aware, not only good memes regarding coronavirus. Look for information, search, learn to find good information, and as we always say, rumors only create panic. Good information creates organization. So share good information. We have a lot of resources. If you go to our website, www.arisechicago.org, we have a new tab with updated information on workers' rights during the COVID-19 pandemic. We have frequently asked questions in English, Spanish, and Polish. We have new videos we have developed on how to apply for unemployment, the famous basic package, who's going to get the checks, who's not going to get them. Of course, the bad news is that mostly immigrants are not going to get any kind of help, and they cannot apply for unemployment, etc. So we have to go to other kind of resources from food banks and etc., etc. But mostly and foremost, learn your rights in the workplace. We have an incredible manual. You can, download it. You can read it online. And if you don't know what your rights are, then you cannot exercise them. You cannot enforce them. So that's step number 1. Get the information, and we will do everything we can, because also, personal speaking, want to solve it. Workers have to solve the problems themselves. They are the ones in the middle of these incredibly awful situations. If they don't take action, nobody is going to be the savior. Nobody come and solve the problem for them.
Raza, pull it back a little bit.
No, por favor, excelente. Ok, 3, 2, 1. Tenemos muchos recursos para los trabajadores. pero el paso número 1 es aprender sus derechos. Si uno no sabe a qué tiene derechos, pues no puede ejercer esos derechos. Vayan a nuestro sitio web o a nuestra página de Facebook, arisechicago.org. Déjenme hacer una propaganda muy rápida aquí. Perdón, van a ver, aquí está la propaganda rápidamente. Se escribe Arise, Arise Chicago, okay? That's a piece of propaganda. Arise Chicago, ORG. Los trabajadores mismos tienen que resolver los problemas. Yo no estoy en la fábrica, yo no estoy en la compañía, yo no estoy en la situación en la que ustedes están. Ustedes tienen que aprender cómo resolver. Nosotros podemos apoyar de lejos, con llamadas, con documentos, pero cada trabajador tiene que tomar acción en su lugar de trabajo. That's pretty much it.
Well, thank you. And now, Cristobal, I'm going to ask you the same question. I want it in English, Spanish, and then French.
Oh, bon. Bien sûr, bien sûr.
First English, please. What's your? Give us the message.
You know, I think for everyone listening out there, I really feel in a lot of ways it's the worker centers that are at the vanguard of a lot of struggles right now. You know, we're in our worker center, we have a rapid response network. In our worker center, we have a cultural committee. In our worker center, we have anyone who comes to volunteer has been plugged in with something. And I really feel that the worker centers are at the cutting edge of creating what you might call working class consciousness. You know, a new worker culture. You know, we sing in our worker center. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's really the worker center. If you're out there and you want to get involved, that there's really so much that we can do because there's so much need out there to get involved. There's so much abuse out there. If I think of DuPage County, you know, it's before we started the worker center, the news that would go around, bosses hitting workers, the wage theft, abuse, you know, you name it. It was like a zoo out here. And I like to think that by existing here, we're bringing a little bit of civilization back here and emboldening the workers, because as Jorge knows, every time there's a victory, I think there's a new boldness that the workers have, you know, that the word gets around, you know, that we don't have to just be, you know, the cheap labor force, you know, the cheap wage earners here, that we really could be dignified in the struggle here, that we could transform our workplaces here. And I think every struggle that we've been in, it doesn't only transform, you know, it's not just a struggle for rights, it's really a struggle for dignity. And when the dignity of a human being is out there, you know, you're just more alive, you know, you're more free, you feel, or, you know, the water tastes sweeter, you know, whatever you want to call it. But I really feel that by struggling, particularly in the Latino community and the working class community here, we are recovering our humanity here. And in that, it's recovering the humanity of every other worker here, because, you know, I grew up, my parents were farm workers, and they came up here to do sugar beets in Joliet and cucumbers in Dansville. So that's how they got up here. But the way that workers were treated, you know, just like a piece of garbage and a beaner. And so I think we've come a long way. And it's not coincidentally, I feel that the labor struggle is at the heart of everything, that the labor struggle has been in the soul of everything here. So if you're not involved in the labor center, you know, get involved in the worker center. We're here. The Rise is there. You know, I think there's enough work for everybody, and there's a lot of things to be changing, particularly during COVID-19 and the coronavirus here, where you really see the most savage aspects of capitalism coming out here, forcing workers to work against their will, looking at the profits, you know, allowing this to happen just by neglect, by focusing only on the markets here. And the worker center here, our focus is exactly on the workers here and the people before profits.
And you don't often think about that with DuPage County. DuPage County is known for its wealth. Generally speaking, one of the richest counties in the country. Yet this is kind of the invisible struggles that a lot of people face in this very county. Is that correct?
Yeah, you know, to paraphrase Langston Hughes, you know, I grew up in DuPage County. DuPage County was never DuPage County for me. You know, I never took part in in the wealth. And but I think that's true that the Latino community has grown here. We have Elk Grove Village that has one of the largest industrial parks in the United States, if I'm not mistaken. We have a huge belt in Bolingbrook, and that goes to Addison here. And I think it's all premised on that there's just going to be cheap, unlimited cheap labor. And I think that's changing. I think that it's not just a given there's going to be unlimited cheap labor anymore. And if there is, that unlimited cheap labor is more and more conscious of themselves as workers. So yes, in this, it's kind of funny because, the facade of DuPage County is this wealthy elite place here. But the reality from the calls in the restaurants and the service sector, the factories here, have all been the complete opposite of abuse, of hardship, and of corporate greed that just completely overlooks the lives and the well-beings of the workers. It also is worth mentioning, in the past 25 years, 3 out of 4 jobs in DuPage County have been low-wage jobs, service sector jobs, warehouse jobs, and restaurant jobs, and landscaping jobs. And who is doing those jobs? Not the people here in Wheaton, where I'm at right now, but the Latino community, our African-American brothers and sisters, single moms. It's really been a really parasitical relationship here in DuPage between the oligarchy and the workers, which we're trying to turn over.
So is your work, have you found it to make it more equitable, to at least bring that to the consciousness of the people in this county, and your work with Arise, the broader community?
Is it for Jorge?
That's for you, actually. The work you're doing, is it making it, do you see the progression to make it more equitable in DuPage County? And then I was wondering about any relationships you have with Arise and other organizations to bring it to a broader perspective.
I think we've done about 50 struggles since we started the group, about 50 struggles. We haven't been around as long as Arise, but there's been about 50 struggles that we've taken, and those workers have stuck with us, and they've gone on to other factories. Sometimes we've won and sometimes we've lost, but, those workers keep up the struggle here, and they keep on inspiring more workers because, as Jorge points out, this isn't coming from us. We're trying to produce a consciousness in the working class here in where we're at, and that they go on and bringing more consciousness wherever they're at here. And this might look like a union. This might look like a collective action. This might look like we've formed a lot of workers associations where it's not actually a union, but there's 2 or 3 workers that are fighting for a similar thing. So it works like a union. So and as far as working with Arise, I think Arise has been really a vanguard for us. We've learned a lot from Arise and from Jorge. They're an older organization, but I think I can't think of another organization in Chicago that's doing more than Arise. And I can't think of an activist in Chicago that is more loyal to the working class than Jorge. Literally, I can call him on the phone when there's a struggle or we don't know what to do, and he'll be there. And I think that that's really a legacy of what, how valuable Jorge is to us in the labor movement here in Chicago, in the immigrant rights movement.
I can say for my union, NABET Local 41, he's been countlessly advocate for us, takes my calls whenever I want, whether it's work with NABET or whether it's work to be like, hey, I got a radio show that I want you to get the message across out on. He's always available to us. So, I cannot appreciate and thank him enough for that. I will ask you just one more question, Cristobal, is to give your message in Spanish to any of our viewers and listeners who would like to hear it in Spanish. And then later, I'd like to remind you, I know Sean cut out the connection, as all the connections going on right now are kind of weak, but Sean Allen will be hosting the show on Sunday with both of you gentlemen, where we can get this message out to a broader audience. And this is a message worth repeating just because there's so much struggle going on right now to figure out what's happening. I just want to get that plug out there. Both of these gentlemen will be joining us Sunday, 3 o'clock, WCPT. But just give your message in Spanish, if you would.
Pues yo quiero decir a la gente que los trabajadores crean toda la riqueza, como nosotros sabemos. Son los trabajadores que producen el valor. Más y más en la comunidad mexicana y la comunidad latina nos estamos dando cuenta de que nosotros podemos agarrar las riendas de nuestras vidas, sobre todo en las luchas laborales. Pasamos la mayoría de nuestros días trabajando ahí, como haciendo de cualquier capricho de los patrones, como dice Jorge, los patrones cabrones. Pero cuando hay una lucha laboral y cuando ustedes que están escuchando están inspirando a los demás, organicémonos, o sea, movilicémonos. Hay una belleza ahí que vive ahí. cuando
¿Y
estás
qué?
defendiendo tu pueblo, porque sí se puede hablar de mexicanismo, patriotismo, pero lo que yo veo, el alma de una persona está en la lucha, la identidad viene de la lucha, el significado de la vida, todo viene de la lucha. Y en las fábricas en que nosotros hemos luchado, en la comunidad mexicana, cada una de esas luchas que hemos armado, la gente sale de ahí con más conciencia, más viva, más poderosa, más una altura más alta como seres humanos. Y es ahí que le digo que los centros de trabajadores estamos haciendo lo posible para sembrar una conciencia laboral, una conciencia de trabajadores. Y yo les anima a los demás, organiza si no tienes sindicato, si no tienes asociación, organízate, anima a los demás y vamos a ver lo que se puede pasar, porque todo está en flujo aquí. Estamos animando que ese flujo va en dirección de la clase trabajadora.
Sean, did you get all that? The Spanish class is paying off?
I got it all. I
Well,
heard every word and it sounded great.
we cannot thank you both enough for joining us. It was absolutely educational, inspirational, and not over. For those of us, those of you watching and listening, both of these gentlemen will be joining us again. That's Jorge Mújica. And say your name for me, because Cristobal, I got the last name, still throws me off a little bit.
Cavazos.
That's it.
Cavazos.
Both of you guys will be joining us on our show, hosted by Sean Allen on WCPT, 3 o'clock, 8:20 a.m. WCPT, 3 o'clock. We can't wait to hear the message that you have and to tell what workers are dealing with in DuPage County, in Cook County, with Arise, with any organization which serves the immigrant community and helps people deal with the dignity of work. Fundamentally, it's about the dignity of work. And Sean, let's get some final thoughts from you.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming. Make sure to tune in on Sunday, 3 o'clock, WCPT 820. Yeah, we'll follow up with this and talk more about workers' rights and how to get a union message out more. Appreciate you guys for coming on, though.
Absolutely. Thank you both for your time. It looks like Jorge dropped off. He had things to do, but we appreciate both of your time. I know you guys have a struggle out there. I know you're fighting the good fight in very adverse conditions. So thank you for taking a moment out to talk to us and tell us about this fight. Thank you both.
Thank you very much, my dear brothers. Stay strong. Adelante.
Strong. Thank you.
Thank you.